Alright, I better get going here. So it's Wednesday, the 21st. First thing I'll make note of, we are week 6, and this is actually day 16, but I will talk briefly about Monday. Monday was day 15, and we had snow and ice. Snow and ice, so we didn't meet on Monday. Alright, so here we go. We talked some things about the outline. I reviewed productivity software. We'll talk more about that. Word processing following up on the work. The skills-based hardware, system unit, storage, talked a little bit about those. And we did some more in spreadsheets. We did not cover rounding yet. We're going to do that on Friday. But we did cover the if statement, and also, let's see here, let me make this a little more clear. Vlookup. Alright. Now on Friday, we're going to input and output. We'll mention software. Drive, I think we're going to move that to Monday. And we'll talk some more about assignment 1, make sure we get that finished up okay. So, some items here. We talked about the outline. And some outlines say view only, so those people, they have to make sure we can view it so we can comment. Okay, I talked about productivity software. Some people listed iOS and Android. Those aren't productivity softwares, those are operating systems. Somebody listed Dropbox as a productivity software. No, that's a place where that's a file storage for people. And I say file storage and share. Okay, it's a great place for those items. I have Dropbox. I actually have it where I pay for it. Alright. Word processing. The skills-based, the students did a really good job on that. And it talked about hardware. Talked about hardware and processors and storage and so forth, and it kind of is a little lesson on what to consider when buying. We did talk about the article's a little bit old, and in the future, probably this summer, I'm going to replace that. Okay. I did talk about something that's pretty important. I'll mention this probably again. When you do headers in word processing, you want one title, one subtitle, and then your headers should follow. If you have a header 1, then underneath that you would have header 2s, or maybe header 3s under header 2s. And you can have another header 1, header 2s, header 1, and it should go in that sequence. Makes it way easier to read and way easier for readers, like screen readers for people who are blind, to read the information. Alright, we talked a little bit about using technology. Well, is it old, you know, when you're looking up information, but the ideas were good? That has to do with, this, talked about this as far as this word processing. Online, it has value, and we talked about some of those things. People said, is it top of the search? The source is important. Time and date are important. You know, it's other people's thoughts. And some mentioned, is it a .com, .org? One person said if it's a .com, people can add to the content. That's not always true. We mentioned wikis, WIKI, where people can comment on, so forth. Let's move forward. Alright, so a little review. I already mentioned this, but word processing notes, so you should be aware of the headers. It was about technology, some of it old, the ideas were good. Online material, does it have value? You need to be careful how you approach that. Alright, here are the review. Let's look a little bit here at some of the things we talked about. Computing devices have the main thing is the processor. The next main thing is the memory, and then they communicate via an electronic bus. And then we have storage, and we had the students look up a little bit the difference between a hard drive, that's magnetic storage on a disk, and solid state drive would be flash. Okay, and you can have either one, and there's some plus or minus to those you can look up specifically. In this class, remember, we're going to talk about storage is where you permanently store things, and memory is where the information is that the processor is currently working on. That will be important. We'll look at an inside of the computer, hopefully on Friday or Monday. We talked about some of the items dealing with a computer. Clock speed, how many gigahertz. We listed just a made up number here. We talked a little bit about processors and how many cores they are. You don't need to know a lot, but you should be just familiar in general about those. We're going to talk about performance and how it relates to computers. Okay. Now, I arranged this kind of at the last minute. We're going to look up photography in Davenport on Friday, and then we'll interview a person at a home-based photography business. A person who has lots of data to store. Okay, so we'll talk about that. We also looked up Troll Factory. We're running a little bit of a survey, so we're going to look up something every day. And what we're testing right now, we're looking at Google. We're going to learn something new from Google. We're going to decide if it's accurate. And then we're going to compare the searches to see if anybody gets a different search. Alright, and later on we're going to expand that to not just the PCs in the classroom, but we're going to ask people to look up things on their phones. Almost done. What color? We use green for spreadsheets. We finished up the day doing spreadsheets. Most important part of a spreadsheet is analysis. I will say that every day from here on that we work on. Okay? Two different commands. We did the if command. If there's a condition, if this condition is true, it does what's here and ignores what's over here. If the condition is false, it does what's here and ignores what's here. And this condition, we'll look at greater than, less than, and so forth. Greater than, less than, equals. And there's some other ones we can use. Okay, so it's an if. This formula would start with an equal sign, and then we'd have an if. Okay? Now, we can have a vlookup. Interesting. You can look up this value, that's typically pointing at a cell for some value, comma. This is the table. This is the value. And then this is the column in the table. And it'll look up a value. So if we have spreadsheets are very good at building tables, to say the least. So if we had some numbers in here like 10, 40, 50, 80, 100, whatever, Okay, and let's say, look at this, this is A, B, C, D, and then we had some values over here, like 1 and 3, 2 and 8. I have no idea why these numbers would be here. 6 and 7, 1 and 4. We could do a vertical lookup. We could, first of all, you would name this table, give it a name, so you have this range, an absolute range, from this cell to this cell, and then you can take a value. Let's say that value was 30. You could have that in a cell, and what it'll do, it'll look in this table, look for 30, not there. Oh, 40 is bigger than 30. It'll go back to this cell and then look in the columns. If we say column 3, then it's going to grab the item out of column 3. Crazy. Let's do another example. So let me do it in blue. Let's say the value we're looking up is in, I'm going to make this up, so over here, let's say A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so, and this is row 1. So over here is 90. Okay? So then, if the value we're going to look up, let's just say was in, let me make this a little more clear. Let's say that's F, and this is E. So if we're looking up the value, let's say in F1, which is 90, it'll come down. Let me show. I'll do this in red then. It'll look for 90. It hits 100. 100's too big, so it goes back to this column. And in this scenario, let's say we're looking up 2. Then it's going to go over to the second column and grab the 6. Crazy. We'll give you more help with that as we continue in spreadsheets. That's it for today.